The movie revolves around a car which miraculously comes to life and starts racing on its own. It ends up becoming the world champion. The movie opens with a '53 Volkswagen Beetle named Herbie, who has become famous for winning various car races and making headlines. However, after a string of victories, Herbie's performance starts to wane. The excitement around him fades, and he no longer appears in the newspapers or races. Eventually, Herbie is seen being towed to a junkyard owned by Dave. There, Herbie causes trouble for Dave and his worker as they struggle to unload him from the truck. Next, we see Margaret Peyton, known as Maggie, at her college graduation ceremony with her father, Ray Peyton Sr. She is excited about her upcoming internship with ESPN in New York. However, despite her outward happiness, she secretly dreams of racing like the men in her family. After the ceremony, Maggie and her father visit her older brother, Ray Peyton Jr., who is practicing on the racetrack. Once practice is over, they head home, where her father proudly hangs Maggie's graduation certificate on a wall, already filled with his and his father's racing achievements. The next day, Ray Sr. takes Maggie to Dave's junkyard to pick out her graduation present. Maggie looks at various cars, and she ultimately decides on a Nissan parked right in front of Herbie. As Maggie tries to finalize the deal for the Nissan, Herbie, facing the crusher, makes a last-ditch effort to catch her attention. In the process, Herbie ends up falling on top of the Nissan and crushes it. This unexpected turn of events leads Maggie and her father to choose Herbie instead. After Ray Sr. repairs Herbie to make it drivable, he hands the keys over to Maggie. As she prepares to drive, she finds a letter in the car that instructs her to take good care of Herbie, as he will help solve the owner's problems. When Maggie starts up Herbie, the car suddenly speeds off and heads straight to a nearby garage owned by Kevin, a high school friend of Maggie. After a quick chat, Kevin decides to inspect Herbie's condition and takes it for a test drive to see what needs fixing. On the drive, Maggie asks Kevin where she can find car parts, but Kevin suggests they take Herbie to a car show instead. Maggie is reluctant, but Herbie drives them to the local event on his own. At the show, a NASCAR champion named Trip Murphy is making a publicity appearance for his upcoming video games. As the crowd goes wild for Trip, Maggie decides she wants to leave and asks Kevin to take Herbie back to Dave. Just as Maggie is about to go, Herbie starts honking the horn uncontrollably. Maggie disconnects the wires to stop the noise, but in the process, Herbie spills engine oil all over her clothes. Meanwhile, Kevin finds a racing suit with the name of Max in the trunk of Herbie. Maggie changes into the suit Kevin found in the trunk and accidentally gets her head stuck in a helmet. While she is struggling to get it off, she bumps into Trip. Trip makes a rude comment about Herbie which angers the car. As Kevin and Maggie settle into Herbie, the car starts up and scratches Trip's vehicle. This leads to an impromptu race between Trip and Maggie, which Maggie narrowly wins by a second. After the race, Kevin and Maggie return to Kevin's garage, where Kevin praises Maggie for beating Trip Murphy, the NASCAR champion. Maggie tries to explain that it was not her driving but Herbie. However, Kevin is doubtful, insisting that Herbie is just a car and needs a driver. Skeptical, Kevin thinks Maggie was the real driver, and she eventually leaves with Herbie unable to explain her point. The next day, Ray Sr. and Ray Jr. are discussing their sponsorship issues. Ray Jr. has been struggling with his races and keeps losing. Sally, one of their sponsors, arrives with exciting news. She shows Ray Sr. and Maggie a video clip of the previous day's race between Trip and Maggie. Ray Sr. is upset to see Herbie in the race and rushes out, with Maggie following him. She tries to explain that she was not the one driving and lies, saying that Max, one of Kevin's friends, borrowed her car for a one-time race. Ray Sr. then warns her against street racing, reminding her of a past incident where she crashed a car and nearly lost her life. Meanwhile, Trip is filled with anger after losing to an old Volkswagen Beetle. Despite his manager and brother Larry advising him to ignore the upset as a fluke, Trip is determined to get revenge. He instructs Larry to promote a special race in the desert, offering a $10,000 cash prize to anyone who can beat him. Later, Maggie visits Kevin, who shows her his plans to improve Herbie for the upcoming race in Lancaster. He asks her to participate, but Maggie declines, reminding him of the promise she made to her father, who forbade her from racing after a past street racing accident that put her in the hospital. She also talks about her future plans to move to New York, for which she needs to save up for rent. Meanwhile, Herbie notices an ad for Tripp's race in the newspaper and makes sure Maggie and Kevin see it. Kevin convinces Maggie to enter the race, suggesting they could split the $10,000 prize. Maggie could use her share for rent, and Kevin could invest in his garage. Seeing it as a one-time opportunity, Maggie agrees. They then start working on Herbie, improving and preparing him for the race. As they work together, Kevin and Maggie bond and enjoy their time fixing up the car. At the same time, Tripp and one of his friends are investigating Herbie's engine, trying to figure out why it outperformed Tripp's car. However, they are unable to find any answers. Later that evening, Maggie overhears a conversation between Ray Sr. and Sally. Sally informs Ray Sr. that her company is dropping Ray Jr. from their sponsorship. Ray Sr. pleads with her to keep them on until the next race and agrees that if the team does not qualify, they can be dropped then. After Sally leaves, Ray Sr. comes in and realizes Maggie has overheard the discussion. He then tells her that she should feel proud of not being involved in the situation. On the day of the event, Maggie and Kevin arrive with a freshly repaired Herbie. When Maggie goes to sign up, she runs into Tripp, who confronts her. Maggie tells Tripp that she is sponsoring Max, but Tripp insists on speaking with him. Maggie declines the request. As the race begins, Maggie and Herbie swiftly outpace the other competitors and secure a spot in the final race against Tripp. Throughout the event, Tripp has been closely watching Herbie and its driver. He eventually pieces together that Maggie is behind the wheel. In the evening, after the race, Maggie and Kevin catch up. Kevin surprises Maggie with a small gift, a locket with the number 53 engraved on it. As they are about to kiss, Tripp interrupts them. He then offers Maggie a chance to take his NASCAR racer for a spin in the desert. After Maggie leaves with Tripp's NASCAR, Tripp decides to investigate how Herbie managed to beat him. However, Herbie ends up causing trouble for Tripp instead. When Maggie returns, Tripp tricks her into a high-stakes bet. Tripp convinces Maggie to race for pink slips, meaning the winner will take ownership of the loser's car. He challenges her to put Herbie's ownership on the line in one final race, claiming that if Maggie wins, she can keep his NASCAR racer. The next day, Maggie's friend Charisma surprises her at home and asks if she wants to go for a ride. Maggie turns down the offer, explaining that she has a plan to meet someone in the desert. To cover her tracks, she tells Charisma that her boyfriend Max is racing against Tripp, so she needs to go support him. Before the race begins, Herbie seems unusually agitated. Kevin notices this and asks Maggie if she left Herbie alone with Tripp the previous night. Before Maggie can respond, Charisma interrupts. Kevin then takes Charisma aside, allowing Maggie and Herbie to focus on getting ready for the race. At the event, when Tripp and Maggie arrive at the racetrack, Maggie whispers to Herbie that they need to win. Ray Sr., Sally, Kevin, and Charisma are there to support Herbie. However, during the race, Herbie becomes alarmed about Maggie's goal of winning Tripp's stock car and starts to throw the race. Herbie is also unaware of the deal Maggie made with Tripp the previous night, leading him to deliberately lose. After the race, Maggie gets out of the car and talks to Herbie, with Tripp overhearing their conversation. This forces Maggie to reveal her dual role, surprising everyone in the crowd, including her father. Kevin quickly goes to comfort Maggie, but Tripp takes advantage of the situation and grabs control of Herbie. Kevin rushes to intervene, but Tripp tells him about the deal he made with Maggie the night before. Disheartened, Kevin leaves the scene, and Ray Sr. arrives to express his disappointment that Maggie raced without his permission. Maggie has no choice but to watch as Herbie is towed away. Although everyone is disappointed with Maggie, her college friend Charisma, who was at the race, praises her. Charisma tells Maggie that she clearly has a true racing spirit, and suggests that she might enjoy racing more than her upcoming position with ESPN. Later, Maggie goes to see Tripp with the hope of buying back Herbie. However, she discovers that Tripp has sold Herbie to a demolition derby, where the little Beetle is set to be destroyed. Determined to save Herbie, Maggie makes her way to the derby just in time to see the car already suffering significant damage. She speaks with the arena's owner, who agrees to return Herbie to her for free if the car can survive the derby unscathed. Maggie then spots a monster truck heading toward Herbie and realizes that time is running out. Maggie then asks Charisma to create a distraction to draw the guard's attention away. With the guard distracted, Maggie runs into the field where the derby is taking place and pleads with Herbie to help her. Moved by Maggie's heartfelt encouragement, Herbie responds by starting up and lifting her into the driver's seat. With Maggie at the wheel, Herbie navigates through the chaotic derby, skillfully avoiding the monster truck and other hazards. Through a combination of agility and determination, Herbie manages to outmaneuver the competition and win the derby. This performance allows them to escape the impending destruction, securing Herbie's survival. Maggie then takes Herbie to Kevin's garage, where the car collapses from exhaustion. She tells Kevin that he can be angry with her, but she urgently needs his help to take care of Herbie. The next day, Maggie and Kevin go to the race track to support Ray Jr. During the race, Ray Jr. crashes badly into the wall, which means he will need to go to the hospital. Although he has qualified for the upcoming NASCAR Nextel Cup Series, his vision problems might prevent him from racing. This could force the Peyton Racing team to forfeit the next race. Ray Jr. then suggests that Maggie take his place in the race. Kevin and Sally both support this idea, but Ray Sr. firmly refuses to let Maggie race. This makes Maggie angry, and she confronts her father. Ray Sr. explains that Maggie looks just like her mother, and he cannot bear the thought of losing her as well. Maggie tries to reassure him, saying that even though she may resemble her mother on the outside, she shares her father's racing spirit and determination on the inside. She insists that racing is in her blood and that she is ready to take on the challenge, but Ray Sr. still refuses. Later, Kevin and Maggie are in the garage looking over the damage to Herbie. Kevin delivers some bad news, saying that he cannot repair Herbie because he lacks the necessary spare parts, and his suppliers are not willing to provide any until he pays off his outstanding debts. As they are trying to figure out what to do, Ray Jr. shows up and offers Maggie the chance to race in his place, despite their father's objections. Maggie insists that she wants to race in Herbie, not just any car. Seeing her determination, Ray Jr. and his pit crew decide to help. They work through the night alongside Kevin and Maggie, pulling together all their resources to fix Herbie and get him ready to meet NASCAR standards. They work tirelessly, determined to make sure Herbie is race ready. Their hard work pays off, as Herbie is eventually prepared to compete, giving Maggie the chance to prove herself on the track. The next day at the racetrack, Tripp, who is being interviewed, is shocked to see Herbie show up for the race. Annoyed, he vents his frustration to his crew before storming off. Meanwhile, the other team members take a closer look at Herbie, and one of them notices the car giving a wink. Although the player mentions this to his teammates, they remain doubtful. As Kevin and the crew prepare Herbie for the race, Maggie asks Kevin to give them some privacy. She has a heartfelt moment with Herbie, expressing her gratitude for his unwavering support and for not giving up on her. Eventually, Herbie and Maggie join the race alongside the team. The crowd is excited to see Maggie and Herbie in action, and Ray Sr., who is watching on TV, is also eagerly following the event. As the race is about to begin, Ray Jr. and Kevin offer words of encouragement to Maggie. Kevin also tries to share his feelings with her, but Tripp interrupts and ominously warns Maggie that the race will be nasty on the track. Herbie starts the race slowly, making the crowd to mock him, but gradually begins to catch up and overtake the competitors. After making his first pit stop, Herbie closely follows the car in front of him, and soon he begins to outpace many of the top contenders. Meanwhile, Ray Sr., who has been watching the race from home, decides to join the crowd at the track to cheer Maggie on in person. Back on the track, Herbie and Maggie find themselves boxed in by other cars. However, Ray Sr. arrives and offers encouragement to Maggie through the team radio. Motivated by his support, Maggie manages to escape the tight situation by driving over the car in front of her. This maneuver damages Herbie's oil system, prompting Maggie to make another pit stop. Kevin quickly retrieves a replacement part from the yellow new Beetle, which Herbie has been admiring throughout the movie, owned by Sally, one of Team Peyton's remaining sponsors. The makeshift oil system is delicate, and Tripp is determined to stop Herbie from winning. Kevin warns Maggie to be cautious to avoid further damage. During the final laps, Maggie is willing to sacrifice the race if it means saving Herbie. Despite the odds, Herbie pushes forward with the goal of winning the race. With Maggie, Herbie, and Ray Sr. all working together, Maggie and Herbie catch up to Tripp in the race. Despite Tripp's team advising him to focus on winning, Tripp tries to force Herbie into the track wall when Maggie attempts to pass him. However, Tripp is caught off guard and ends up crashing into the wall when Maggie slams on the brakes during his next move. Taking advantage of the situation, Herbie climbs over the fence above the wall to pass Tripp's car, which is now overturned on the track. After landing back on the track, Maggie and Herbie push forward and win the race. Maggie's father and brother come to congratulate her, while Tripp is taken away in an ambulance, still fuming about Herbie's unexpected victory. Kevin arrives to congratulate Maggie as well. In a moment of celebration, Herbie nudges Kevin towards Maggie, leading them to share a kiss. The film concludes with a photograph capturing Herbie's triumphant victory, celebrating the old legendary racing car. Although Herbie had been forgotten for many years, he makes a remarkable comeback by helping Maggie win the race and create new history. Later that evening, Ray Sr. humorously advises Herbie and Sally's new Beetle not to stay out too late on their date. In the final scenes, Maggie continues to pursue her racing dreams, now competing in NASCAR, alongside her trusty car, Herbie.